Welcome back, nerds. Man, is it a fantastic time to be a Resident Evil fan. Despite my doubts, we saw the Separate Ways DLC shown off at the PlayStation State of Play. I gotta say, I wasn't expecting that. Also, I wasn't expecting that on top of its reveal, we would get a release date that is literally just a few days away. However, with the official reveal of Separate Ways out of the way, now comes the speculation time, my friends. I'm hyped for Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways, and yeah, I like to let my imagination go a little wild every now and then, especially when Resident Evil content is on the way. So with that said, I think it's time that I chime in on the upcoming Ada Wong DLC. What wild things and theories do I have for this story behind this story? See, I took a good hard look at that trailer. I dived down into the deepest parts of my mind and pulled out whatever Resident Evil 4 lore I could think of and brought it all to the surface for today's video. And ultimately, I made a list of some of the craziest, insane theories in my mind regarding Separate Ways. Some I'm sure you've heard from other Resident Evil content creators. Others on this list though might surprise you and make you really think that I might be a tad bit of crazy. But hey, it's all fun and games, and just like you are allowed to have your speculations, I'm allowed to have mine. Anyway, my name is Ruben with Nerd Space Games, and this is 5 insane predictions that I have for Separate Ways that I truly believe will turn out to be true. Let's get it.
Ashley, it was you. Catch on quick. Didn't I teach you? Knives are faster.
First, we're going to talk about the big bad boys of Resident Evil 4, Jack Krauser and Albert Wesker. So if you played the original Resident Evil 4, then you might know where I'm going with this. That's because the original game had Krauser working for Wesker as a double agent. Both Ada and Jack were sent by Wesker to retrieve the Plaga symbol. However, it appeared that Resident Evil 4 Remake had changed the circumstances of Jack's reasoning for working with Saddler. In the remake, it appears Krauser has no relation to Wesker at all. On top of that, it seems he chose to come to Saddler on his own in search of power from the parasite versus going there as a double agent.
Being a lackey for these maniacs won't bring your men back. And what the hell for? Revenge on the government? You think they would want that?
Revenge. You think I'm doing all this for revenge?
Isn't that what this is all about?
See, in that jungle, I had a revelation. The most important thing in this world is pure, unadulterated power. Those Illuminados have given me that.
This, of course, completely retconned any sort of relationship that Wesker and Krauser had in the original game. However, I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I've always thought that Krauser was working for Wesker in secret, despite what the remake leads us to believe. And I've always thought that this important information would be revealed to us during the Separate Ways DLC. And I'm not just pulling this information from thin air and hoping it sticks. There are some interesting decisions made by Capcom with Resident Evil 4 Remake. Like how you don't see any sort of communication between Ada and Krauser in the remake. And at least from my perspective, some of the best moments in the original game were the encounters between these two mercenaries for hire, both appearing to work for Wesker, each with their own agenda.
The sample?
Saddler's got it. It seems he sniffed out our little game.
Perfect.
Just so we understand each other clearly, I don't trust you, nor does Wesker. If you try to do anything clever, I will kill you.
Is that so? You know, I met Wesker long before you.
We'll see soon enough if you did.
Yeah, we'll see.
What was really great about this relationship is that it was kind of a battle of wits. As I said, both were trying to keep up the charade of being loyal to Wesker while also following their own motives. And I feel like Capcom knows this. Therefore, what I think Capcom tried to pull on us is that they took every encounter of Ada and Krauser away from the main game and hid them behind the Separate Ways DLC. Then, during Ada's story of Resident Evil 4, we will learn that Krauser is, just like in the original game, a double agent sent by Wesker. Therefore, re-establishing the relationship between Krauser and Wesker. It's also possible that we see it from the perspective that maybe Krauser betrayed Wesker, hence why Ada was sent there to begin with. And this could be what causes that boss fight between Ada and Krauser in the DLC. Either way, there is a pretty big chance that Krauser will be in Separate Ways DLC, and I for one believe it'll reveal that he's working for Wesker just like he was in the original game.
The soul requires cleansing. Come, child.
So another pretty big prediction I want to make is that Mendez is going to be a stalker enemy in Ada's Separate Ways DLC. And before you guys start throwing tomatoes at me, how about you hear me out first? I get it, a lot of you are fatigued by stalker enemies. Honestly though, I don't exactly know why. It's just a small gimmick that adds a little more anxiety to a situation. I don't see anything wrong with stalker enemies being used as long as it's done in the right way. And to me, Mendez makes for a perfect stalker enemy. We even saw hints of it in the main game prior to his boss fight, but even going one step farther, there were rumors that he was supposed to be a stalker enemy throughout the main game. Now it's possible this is exactly that, just a rumor that was never true, or maybe it was something that was supposed to be true but was scrapped. However, I believe it was always intended for the game, just not in the way that we thought it would be. See, we saw that in this version of the game, Capcom decided to keep Ada Wong shooting Mendez to help Leon back at the Chief's house.
The blood has accepted the gift.
I can see Capcom keeping this specific scene and even making it a mandatory scene versus optional scene like the original game was, because they have plans for Mendez and Ada. Now I'm not saying we're going to get an Ada versus Mendez boss fight. The DLC is only selling for $10. At that price, I can't see them including a full Ada versus Mendez fight when I still want to believe she's already getting a new boss fight with U3, which we'll talk about next. And with that in mind, the question then becomes, what can Capcom do with Mendez and Ada Separate Ways DLC? And I think the solution is simple. From the moment she shoots Chief Mendez to save Leon, all the way up until right before the castle when she reappears to meet with Lewis, I feel like Mendez should be a stalker enemy that's constantly chasing after Ada Wong all the way up until he captures her, which is exactly what happens in the original game, and we might talk about that too later on, so stay tuned. After Ashley is rescued by Leon, then Mendez can switch his attention from Ada to Leon, which of course leads up to his final fight with Leon. So I for one think that Mendez is going to be a stalker enemy in Ada Wong's campaign Separate Ways DLC.
Can you make it down? I can catch you.
Yeah, I think so.
Ashley!
So this is probably the most boring prediction that I have. That's because I feel like everybody and their mother already has this exact same theory. You three, you know, it from the original game is actually the left hand of Salazar, basically the other Verdugo. There's a lot of hints to this in the main game. Firstly, the left hand is never seen again after taking Ashley away. Only the right hand Verdugo was sent after Leon, therefore leaving a mystery behind as to what happened to the left hand. Another thing that specifically points to Red Cloak Verdugo being U3 are a handful of files known as the Chronicles of Pursuit 1 through 3. In these documents, we learn that the Numvistadors are in fact known as U2. We also learned that the right-hand Salazar servant that became the Black Cloak Verdugo first experimented on a female servant of Salazar. The creation became known as U3 and it became Salazar's first Verdugo. The servant, jealous of the creation serving his master better than him, took the same U3 formula and became the Black Cloaked Verdugo. The importance of this information is that both Verdugos were known as U3. Sound familiar? That's because if you played the original, you would know that the monster known as It is also known as U3. And in the original, the left hand of Salazar merged with him in his final battle against Leon. However, in the remake, she was nowhere to be found. There are just way too many coincidences here. Red Cloak Verdugo is U3 from the original game. The question now is if she'll appear in the form of the Verdugo that we've already seen, or will she appear as It from the original game? Maybe the female species of the Verdugo has different traits. We see it a lot in the insects and other bugs like spiders, where the female has some dominant traits. It could very well be how we see It versus the standard Verdugo that we already saw. As to how I believe Ada and It will come face to face, I think that might have something to do with how Ada is able to update Leon as to where Ashley is all throughout the castle segment. Perhaps she was trailing It after Ashley was kidnapped, and maybe she got caught and had to come face to face with It. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts.
Great, we're partners then.
Hey, why are you...
No time for any questions, the clock is ticking.
Why are you helping us?
Because it makes me feel better. Let's leave it at that. I will contact you later.
Number 4, Louis saves Ada and goes back for Leon and Ashley instead of saving himself. So I actually always predicted that there was some scenes between Louis and Ada that we were not getting at all. Despite the remake's main game showing us some interesting interaction between Louis and Ada, I've always felt there was more missing there. And thanks to the trailer, I'm more than confident that these two are going to appear closer than they were in the original game. Now, I don't think Ada cared one bit as to if Louis died or lived in the original. However, I do think that'll change going into the Separate Ways DLC for the remake. Mainly just because Ada Wong has appeared to be a little bit more compassionate character than she was in the original game. Here's how I think things are going to play out. Ada is sent by Wesker to meet with his contact, Louis, to retrieve the sample of the Plagas. While doing so, Ada finds herself captured by the enemy. During this time, she is infected with a parasite. As to how she got infected, well, that's the next topic we'll talk about in just a moment. Anyway, upon realizing Ada is infected, Louis wants to help her, so he assists her with removing the parasite and saves her life. In the reveal trailer though, we see Ada confront Louis and he tells her that he must help someone first. I believe that after saving Ada's life, despite having the sample, he decides he wants to return to Leon and Ashley and help save them from the parasite before he can leave with Ada and give her the sample. Upon hearing that the person that he wants to save is Leon, she agrees to this and lets him leave. Of course, we know how this plays out, unfortunately. Still, the encounter altogether is a much more exciting and meaningful relationship between the two than what we saw in the original game.
It's what I researched for all these years, Ada. And I see the symptoms already showing in your eyes.
So I already teased this, but now let's talk about how Ada gets infected. Obviously in the trailer, it's revealed that Ada has been infected with the parasite at some point in time throughout the events of Resident Evil 4. What's even more strange about this though is that Louis actually is the one to confirm this. The reason this is strange is because Louis dies prior to getting to the island. With this in mind, it means that Ada had to be infected prior to Louis's death, since he confirms she is infected in the trailer. Now, assuming based on the trailer that Ada was infected prior to Louis dying, this would mean that she was infected at the castle or at the village, because Louis never made it to the island. And with that in mind, there is one major way where I can see her getting infected prior to the island. Funny enough, I actually already touched on it, as it has to do with Mendez. I think that Mendez caught up to her after she shot him at his house and captured her. This would explain why we don't see anything from Ada up until the end of the cabin fight. Because think about it, just like when Leon was infected, he passed out at the docks, and perhaps Ada had the same reaction after being captured by Mendez. Maybe the big cheese brought her to Sadler, and because of the potential she had, Sadler gave her the parasite. Then that would also explain why we don't see Ada for so long after she rescues Leon. And perhaps the conversation that Louis and Ada had after the cabin fight leads to what we saw in the trailer, where he notices that she is infected. But that does it for this episode of Nerd Space Games. Guys, hit up the comments, let me know what do you think of my insane theories. Which ones do you think are true and which ones do you think are just way off? Also, you know what? Let me know your craziest prediction for Separate Ways. I think one that I have that I didn't put on this list because it might have been too crazy is the fact that maybe Louis is actually still alive after the events of Resident Evil 4. There was that rumor surrounding the fact that they were going to change that story bit going into Resident Evil 4, but then obviously that wasn't the case. But I didn't include it on this list because I don't fully believe that. I think that's completely bonkers, honestly, so I'm going to leave it out. But let me know in the comments what your craziest prediction is for Separate Ways. Anyway, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more ranking videos and content on Resident Evil. Hit that like button to help promote this video, and if you want to become a STARS Patreon member, just click the link down in the description or head over to patreon.com/nerdspacegames. But as always, I'll see you on the next episode of Nerdspace. Take care.